Okay, I'm going to talk about the comparative essay and the structure for it. So the first thing to probably keep in mind is that just like any other essay, it's going to have an intro and it'll have a conclusion. And in between, it has body paragraphs that go in here. I guess when you're talking about structure, what you really want to know is, how do you structure these body paragraphs? And the truth of the matter is that there's no one formula for that. You can structure them in several different ways, and there are probably ways of structuring them that we haven't even thought of yet. So if you come up with a way to structure them that works for you and allows you to compare two texts with each other, don't think you're doing anything wrong by following your instincts and trying something out. The first basic structure I'm going to cover is one that I've heard called the block structure. And basically, like all the others, it has your intro and your conclusion. And this one actually does have 3 paragraphs, 1, 2, and 3. And we'll just label that intro, label that conclusion, and we've got 1, 2, and 3. And all you do is whatever your question is, so like any other essay, a comparative essay must answer a question. So all you do is you take your first text and you answer the question in relation to text 1 in the first paragraph. Then in your second paragraph, you think about the same question, the question that your essay is on, and you answer the question for text 2 in your second paragraph. The only thing that's a little bit different is that you want to get into here little bits of comparison to text 1. Just a few of them. Using words like unlike text 1, like that, in a similar way to text 1. Now you don't have to do much, but what you want to do is leave your examiner feeling that this is a comparative essay and that you're not leaving it all to the last paragraph, which actually you are largely leaving it to the last paragraph, but you don't really want them to feel that. So as you introduce your ideas on the question for text 2, just try and throw in some of these similar, different kinds of phrases so that the examiner feels that you're beginning your comparisons there. But actually, in this paragraph, this final one, this is where you want to come up with perhaps 1, 2, or 3, or 4 key similarities and differences. So maybe 2 of each in relation to the question, and you provide a far more explicit discussion of those. Explicit means obvious, open discussion, and you want to be there when you're doing that. You want to be thinking about things like more, less, those kinds of ideas, not just similar and different, but does one text place more emphasis on something than the other? Are there key features in one text that are absent in the other text or only barely touched upon? So you're really looking at key similarities and differences in sort of more depth in that last paragraph. So that's your block model. All right, the next one I'm going to talk about is one I'm going to call divide by ideas. I've heard it called a few other things, but I think the key thing that's different from the block model is that instead of dividing it, the block model divides it up by texts and then adds a comparative paragraph. The divide by ideas model actually has 3 ideas, and each paragraph discusses a different idea. And this one is actually really similar to a normal text response essay, which generally has 3 key ideas that are explored through the body paragraphs. So it will be the most familiar to you in a way. So the way that this one operates is that just like a normal text response essay, you would have a main point that you make, and that main point is expressed in the first sentence of the paragraph, often called topic sentence, can also be just called a main point, and then you begin to discuss the main point in relation to text 1, and you discuss that for half a paragraph or so, and then you add in a little bridging statement, which is just like a linking sentence. It might be something like, in a similar way, text 2, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and then it moves you on to writing about that same idea with text 2. Okay, and then that model is followed in the other 2 paragraphs as well, where you have a topic sentence, you make your main point, you do text 1, you do text 2, and you make sure that you ease your reader from one point to the next with some kind of bridging statement like text 2 outlines this issue in quite a different way. Okay, so the advantage of this, so you've got your main point, and your 2 texts, and your bridging statement there. The advantage of this is that there's a lot of comparing going on in each of the paragraphs, and in a lot of ways I think you can get a deeper discussion of the ideas and a deeper comparison going on. So I tend to favour this method of doing it, but there is another method as well, which I'm going to outline too. Interestingly, and one I stumbled upon in class the other day is having a structure that doesn't involve dividing in relation to ideas, but in relation not to ideas, but to using the characters as the starting point for the paragraph ideas. So you're still answering the question, but you're exploring the question through the characters, almost like running the characters through a computer, where you've got your question. You say, I'm going to take this character, pop them through the question and see what I get by doing that. And you can group characters together and do several in a paragraph, or if you've got a key character, you could just have a whole character on a whole paragraph on that character, and then it just depends how much material you have. So we're studying Ransom and Invictus at the moment, and one of our structures that we have involves a paragraph on Mandela, Nelson Mandela. He's a major character. We had a lot to say on him. And in Ransom, we had Priam. We had a lot to say on Priam. So when we got to Priam, we did a lot of comparing with Mandela in there as well. So we had Priam compared to Mandela. And then in the next one, we actually picked some of the minor characters. So we had PNR and we had Achilles, and we looked at them because these are our two sort of, here we had president, and here we had a king. So they're kind of your top of your pile people. These guys are a captain and a general. And so the next level of people. And we actually ended up with another paragraph in here where we looked at the more ordinary people in both texts, the more ordinary characters in both texts and how they related to the question. So we kind of had that shape of our essay that followed almost like levels of character, and we thought that could work quite well for a number of different essay topics if we tried it out with different questions to just organise our ideas. And interestingly, this model could potentially work reasonably well for the two texts we're comparing at in Year 10, which is the Giver and Animal Farm. So you could, think about a society where you've got the people at the top making the decisions. You've got the next level of people who are the kind of the implementers. And then maybe you've got at the next level, you've got the people at the lower levels of society, or alternatively, you could discuss rebels or people or resistors, those who resist. So there's sort of ways of thinking about your characters to organise an essay as well, and that can be very versatile. So if you were going to adopt this model, you would, similar to an earlier model, your paragraphs would start with a main point. You'd have a main point at the top here, something about that would introduce the idea that you're looking at a particular set of characters. You begin by looking at those characters from text one. When you've had a minute to do that, you add your little bridging sentence there. This is similarly shown in text 2, and then you move on to text 2, looking at those similar kinds of characters. Then you look then at your next set here, and you have your main point, which is about the next set of characters that you're going to look at in relation to the question, your bridging statement. Then you go on to your text 2. Like that. It can work really well. One thing I stumbled upon is sometimes with comparative essays I've got a lot going on in my head, and I find it hard to think of 3 ideas. Sometimes what really comes to mind is not 3 ideas, but 2 ideas. It's funny how this sort of evolved in my head. You've got 2 texts, and you've also it often comes out that you're thinking about things in binaries, positive, negative, past, present, that sort of thing. Often you've got 2, public-private is another one. In Animal Farm and the Giver, you've got you've got physical and mental control. Those kinds of things. So it's often you end up with these kind of what we call binary ideas. So sometimes if you are, you might even end up with a kind of an agree-disagree kind of situation, depending on the question, although those kinds of questions are a lot less common with comparative essays. But if you do find that you can only come up with 2 ideas, think about, are there 2 ideas for a reason? Have you stumbled onto one of these binaries that you can then use as an essay structure? What you do then is, instead of having a 3-paragraph essay, you actually have a 4-paragraph essay where you have idea 1 and idea 2. So say you could see positives and negatives in something. Explore the positives here and the negatives, positives here, negatives here, or vice versa. Say you're going to look at public, private, or physical, mental, and then you actually can go text 1, text 2, where you more fully develop this point here, and then directly compare here. Fully develop the next idea in relation to text 1, and then fully develop that idea in relation to text 2. And that, I think, can be really neat. So all I'm saying, I guess, is that there's no one way of doing this, and if you're planning when you've got the chance to practice, try out different models, but be aware that the ideas that come to you may lend themselves better to one way of planning this essay out more than another one. And I think I've given you a few models there to think about. Okay, just to revise just those 4 models that I've presented. All have an introduction and a conclusion, and in the middle there are some body paragraphs. First is the block method, where you've got text 1 discussed in the first paragraph, text 2 in the second, with a bit of comparison, and then the final paragraph compares both. Next model, we had the comparison of ideas, so used ideas to structure the essay. 3 different ideas where each paragraph compared the 2 texts in relation to a different idea. The third model used sets of characters that shared something in common that sort of came out of the text to divide up the material, and discussed both texts in each paragraph as well. And the final model was the one where you only had 2 ideas and you have a 4-paragraph essay where you discuss your ideas in 2 paragraphs, one after another. And that'll just about do us for today, I think. 4 models is more than enough. Good luck.